Welcome, everybody, to iAfrica Media, the biggest and #1 podcast channel on the African continent for all things eye care. Today is a different one altogether. We're out in South Africa today, and I've got the privilege and the awesome honor to be hanging out with two incredible young ophthalmologists, Dr. Johan Lambrecht and Dr. Sanushka Mutli. How are you today?
Great, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Blushing.
Fantastic, doctors. Doctors, firstly, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules for us to be able to make this podcast possible. Eye care is a big thing right now that has been greatly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We have all had to make significant changes in terms of how ophthalmologists operate, as well as how optometrists go about their business. And this topic for today is basically about collaboration. Should ophthalmologists and optometrists be collaborating with one another? And if so, to what extent should we be collaborating with one another? But before we get started on all of that, we would love for the people of Africa to get to know who you guys are, how your journey has started. And I'll start with Dr. Sanushka Mutli. Just tell us about yourself. How did you end up as an ophthalmologist?
So I'm currently in private practice in Pretoria.
Okay.
And I first got a taste of ophthalmology in third year undergrad when it was part of our neurology theory block. And I was just blown away by the technology. They showed us all these awesome videos on cataract surgery and retinal surgery. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I went on to do my 2 electives in ophthalmology. And that sort of sealed the deal. When I was in the clinical sort of space, I was like, this is what I want to do. Wow. You're helping people see. They're not sick people. I like the fact that you get to work with the old and the very young. And it was just I found it very rewarding. And I'm a fixer. So for me, it was like the perfect job. When I finished my internship in my ComServe, I went to the Transkei. I started an eye clinic in Lusikisiki with one of the nurses who was running one on her own over there. Wow. And after that, I went to Mthatha for about 9 months or so. And then I went to the Port Elizabeth Ophthalmology Department for about 2 years before I joined WITS to do my specialist training.
Wow, incredible. And you, Dr. Lambrecht?
Yeah, so mine's completely different. So currently I'm in Rosebank on Oxford Road in Joburg, and I don't really know where it started. There's a theory that when I was really small, I mean like 1-2 years old, my grandfather apparently had me on his lap, and he said that he had a problem with his eyes and that I must become an eye doctor so I can fix my eyes. So that's the theory. All I know is it's literally all I've ever wanted to do. It's the funniest thing. Like I've just always known. So it's always made decision making in terms of subjects and career paths and that kind of stuff very easy. I just had this single-minded focus. And I mean, there's no ophthalmologists or doctors even in our family, so it's interesting. Like I said, there's the one theory, and that's about it. Wow. And I got my internship post in Joburg, and I just instantly loved the big city life. So towards the end of my internship, I went to the eye department at Charlotte Masheke, and I met one of the registrars there, and I said, can I start attending your academic meetings and just get to know the department while I start studying for my primaries? And that's how I kind of got to know everyone. And then just a further series of fortunate events in terms of not being quite, I came in at a season where for some reason it was just not so competitive. So maybe I just got lucky, and I wouldn't have gotten in otherwise. But I'm very fortunate. I was able to make quite a quick progression from internship and then a medical officer. I was at Natalspruit, which I did orthopedics and ear, nose, and throat. But then straight after that, I got my MO post at the St. John Eye Hospital at Barra in Soweto, and then from then on, a year later, got my registrar post, and the rest is recent history.
Wow. Just for those who are not aware, how many ophthalmologists are in South Africa actually?
I think there are about 250 registered with OSA.
Okay.
Not everyone is registered with OSA, but I think there are about 250 doctors, so trainees and specialists that are registered with OSA.
And
I think trainees make about 40 something out of that number. Yeah.
And then from that number, how many are female and how many are male?
That's a good question. The majority are definitely male.
And now what I've noticed over the years with the two of you, that when I graduated as an optometrist about 12 years ago, a lot of the ophthalmologists that we were exposed to were your older male ophthalmologists, and all CPD related events, anything pertaining to an ophthalmologist, you knew that the point of contact was with an older ophthalmologist. And then a few years ago,
Old
the
person.
two of you, I don't want to say popped up out of nowhere, but you came in guns blazing, and you have basically redefined how people view ophthalmology. Dr. Johan, you are young, you're always active, you're always found at optometry related events in Johannesburg. And the same applies with you, Dr. Sanushka. How did that come about? Why did you guys decide that, you know what, I don't just want to be under the radar, I actually want to make up a name for myself? Which areas of speciality did you guys identify within ophthalmology that you guys want to focus on in order to build a brand and a name for yourselves? And how did that come about?
So let me start by telling you where we popped up from. So Johan and I were very, very fortunate to be part of the first Young Ophthalmology Committee.
Okay.
The Young Ophthalmologist Society is a sub-committee of OSA, and it was started by Bayanda Mbambisa, who's the current vice president of OSA. And the two of us were on that first committee, and that really opened doors for us. I mean, in terms of exposure, and like you say, just making people aware that there's a younger group of people and who have just finished their specialization, who want some exposure, who want to get to know optometrists, who want to network with the older guys as well. And I think that helped us a lot in exposing ourselves. And it's, like I said, it's opened up a lot of doors for us. We've connected with lots of ophthalmologists in Africa as a result. Wow. And a lot of other African countries are also starting young ophthalmology chapters as a result. So it's really, 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 really cool.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, to that, can I add to that?
Yes, please.
That there is always, like Sanushka said, you know, there's always a desire to network with your peers, and in that sense, you know, some will be more like your mentoring type peers. So the older ophthalmologists that have been in the industry, we all owe a huge debt to them. I mean, South Africa is actually, in terms of the last 100 years and innovation in ophthalmology and other medical fields, I think we owe a lot to the previous generation, and to now take over the baton certainly takes a lot of initiative. It's not just going to happen by itself. There's a lot of challenges in healthcare still, and you know, that's why Dr. Bayanda Mbambisa creating that leadership platform for young ophthalmologists to step onto and just, you know, take responsibility for the industry, and continue to build those relationships. I think it's kind of how we popped up. It just is a sense of like ownership and responsibility for the industry, because like I said, a lot of challenges, but also a lot to be grateful for, and a lot of building that's been done in the past that we now need to expand on.
Wow, I have to put a disclaimer to this right now. In the next few months, there will be a Young Optometrists Association or committee, because the two of you have inspired me to go and create one for optometry, because I believe that, like you said,
that's a great idea.
You have to be able to take from what the older generation have done and be able to learn as much as you can from them. But in order for a particular industry to get to the next level, you cannot exclude young people. And young people come with a different flavor, different approach. And you still have to work with those older optometrists and ophthalmologists whilst they're still at the top of their game, so that you are picking the best of what you can from them in order to get to the next level. Now, one thing that I've associated with ophthalmology over the years is that ophthalmologists see themselves there and they see optometrists there. Do you guys seem to have a different approach? You seem to have this thing that ophthalmology and optometry needs to be collaborating with one another. What are your thoughts with regards collaboration? Should we be collaborating with one another? And what is the role of optometrists in that collaboration? And what is the role of ophthalmologists in that collaboration?
I think you're 100% right, Obi. I think especially with young ophthalmologists, I think we love collaborating. And at the end of the day, we've all got the same goal. We want our patients to see well. We've got eye care as a top priority. So there's many reasons why we should collaborate. In terms of education, that's a big one. So I'll give you, like Johan and I were chatting about it the other day, but one of the projects that Young Ophthalmology came up with was a optics or refraction tutorials. So in your training, your intermediate exams involve optics and refraction. And as part of the practical exam, you have to know how to refract. And one of the companies, Essilor, basically came and did optics tutorials. Wow. And I mean, who better to learn refraction from than an optometrist, you know? Wow. And it's been so helpful to all the doctors that we're rolling it out into all the provinces now. Initially, it was just a Gauteng initiative. And so many people need it. They need that kind of one-on-one sort of platform for refraction or to learn refraction. So things like that. Wow. And then also screening programs. I think as doctors and as optometrists, screening is so important, and education, especially in rural communities and in primary care sort of level clinics, screening of diabetics, of glaucoma, teaching people what cataracts are, screening preschool kids for vision. All of those things can be a collaboration between the two specialties. And there's a lot of overlap in what we do. And I think when it comes to patient management, we obviously overlap when it comes to refractive surgery or refracting our patients. Me personally, so maybe this is just a young ophthalmology thing, but for me, I send my patients to whoever I think is going to give them the best. And for me, whenever I do cataract surgery, I send my patient back to their optometrist for their refraction, or I send them to their optometrist for their contact lenses, okay, or low vision aids. So it should be a symbiotic relationship, and I think most of the times it is. And I think what's important is to develop a good relationship with your nearby optometrists, just so that you can pick up the phone and give them a ring, just pick their brain, and vice versa. It should work both ways. That's just my take on it.
Dr. Jan?
Yeah, that's really good, and it really touched on a lot of things. And you know, education, we are all lifelong learners, and so education is not just for the next generation, but where I have learned a lot is in doing CPD talks myself, which obviously start out as like a marketing tool, but it really helps you to keep your own knowledge fresh and stay up to date. And that's where you then meet the optometrists in the area, and you get to learn what each of them prefers in their scope of practice. You know, who does pediatric frames, and who does scleral or rigid contact lenses, and who does your higher end, and who has, you know, pensioner specials, etc., etc. So each of us has this passion for something that inherently makes us better at that because we enjoy doing it. And I think those are the excellent areas then for collaboration. You meet colleagues in the optometry field that are better at the refraction than we are, because that's what they're passionate about. And you know, just that the art of the perfect binocular balancing and you know, finding the optical focus and getting your ad right, and where exactly on the glasses to put it. And like, those are all nuances and part of the art form that we learn about, but might not be passionate about. And there are optometrists that are certainly so passionate about it. And like Sinishka said, it comes down to that patient management. What is going to give your patient the best is if you have people collaborating, each using their area of strength to ultimately give the patient the most comprehensive care. So yeah, for me, it's like a no-brainer. And you mentioned the whole thing of almost an us versus them mentality. And sure, I mean, that's just human nature, you know, where there's any sort of difference, we'll try and group things together so that the differences are separate and whatever's the same is together. But I do think that perception is shifting, willfully so, not with everyone, but with a lot of people. There's this realization of the need, the ongoing need that we have for each other. So there's really no need for that, to overemphasize the two separate specialities. It's very much a joint function in terms of taking care of patients from an eye healthcare perspective.
I like what you both are saying in terms of, firstly, the education component, that we both have significant amount of learning that we can learn or do from one another. And secondly, the collaboration should always be centered around the patient care. How best can we manage this patient? So I love that component that you're both alluding to. Now the question then becomes, do you feel, in your guys' personal opinion, that we as optometrists are doing enough in building relationships with you guys as ophthalmologists? Or let me ask it differently. How important is that relationship? If you find that the optometrists in your area are constantly communicating with you, getting your advice, getting feedback from you, asking questions, does that strengthen the relationship a lot to a point whereby you don't necessarily wait for the optometrist to reach out to you on certain cases? If you find a case that at the level at which optometrists can get involved in, you would also then be more inclined to reach out to the optometrist. So is relationship building so strong, and should it be going beyond just meeting the optometrist at the CPD event? How is relationship building very, very critical in the collaboration? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I agree with you 100%, Obi, because I think creating relationships is an important part of patient care. In my personal experience, I can tell you that whenever I get a referral letter from an optometrist, they always get a report back from me.
Okay.
And I usually get an email back from them to say, okay, thank you. This is what I've done. This is the best corrected VA, and et cetera, et cetera. And whenever the patient needs to see me again, it's a back and forth communication between the two of us. However, when there's no referral letter, you don't know who to send anything to. And the patient will just be like, oh, I went to Specsavers, I'm not sure who's the person I saw. So I think it's really important, whether it's an electronic or whether it's written, to always send the patients with some sort of referral, because that's how you get the relationship started. Like you say, CPD meetings are just usually the doctor giving a little bit of lectures, and sometimes some of the optometrists will come and chat afterwards and ask you some questions, but you don't really get a one-on-one feel for what they do, what they specialized fields are, like Johan was saying.
Yes.
So when you develop that relationship, especially over a patient, it's so easy to pick up the phone and give them a ring when you need help. So I always encourage optometrists to send referrals, because they'll always get a report back.
And you, Dr.
Yeah, I agree. The referral serves also as a form of record keeping. You know, it helps keep track of exactly what happened at what point in time, because the referral notes will have dates on. I'm a little bit more, you know, it's great to get a great letter, and I also want to write reports back, but I'm not nearly as good with my admin as Sinishka is. But if I owe anyone out there letters, please let me know. Because no, it shows it's about respect, and you know, we care about our patients. So you want to know what happened, and did they do okay? Yes. Did they in surgery, or was it a medical issue, etc. But I do make it quite clear to the optometrists that are in contact with me to really feel free to have like an open door policy. And even if you want to send me a WhatsApp, And I'll often just take a screenshot and convert that to a PDF and then save it to the patient's file. So, because you've got to ultimately keep good record and protect the privacy of those records, etc. So you can't be all over the place, but we do have these extremely flexible and varied digital communication platforms. So even if someone does a verbal referral, I'll quickly send an email to my secretary to say so-and-so was referred by so-and-so for this and that. Then immediately you have a digital, secure, dated record of what has happened that you then save to the patient's file, and it's there. So whether it's a handwritten or typed out letter, or whether it's on some sort of digital platform, verbally or written, it's easy to capture. And I find that I've had feedback from many optometrists who just say, thank you for not minding when I send you a fundus photo that I feel a little bit silly about, but I don't want to just ignore it. Just having that open door policy, helps build the relationship. But it has to have a certain level of professionality and officiality to it, with good, secure record keeping, going forward for future reference.
I love what you guys are both saying. You talk about that element of respect, and obviously with your guys' type of schedules, time is of the essence. You've got theater days, your days are very different. What do you expect from an optometrist when they send a referral from you? So if it's clear that you've got a particular method of communication, like Dr. Johan was alluding to, that you prefer or that you are flexible around getting information from your optometrist, how much detail should optometrists be including in those referrals? How important is that information that you're getting from optometrists pertaining to the patient? Do you want them to be sending every single patient that they're not sure about? Or what are your guys' thoughts around that?
That's a good question.
So I've mentioned it in brief, but basically, professionality, transparency, and respect would almost be what I would call it. So the whole thing of, you do the best that you do as professional, but there's always going to be a certain personality nuance to what you do. So if you're someone that writes extremely long, lengthy, detailed reports and put in differential diagnoses and physically request a report back, etc., that's fine. If you're someone that says, query macular pathology, and that's the whole note, that's fine. That's also fine. It's a personality thing. I also think, we're all grateful for work, and different optometrists will have different referral thresholds, that they might, I don't think there's a blanket answer for everyone, but then, it's kind of where the transparency comes in. If you're not comfortable with something, then just ask me. And that's why I have that open door policy, because sometimes the patient really doesn't need to be referred. But like we're also learning now with telemedicine during COVID, is telemedicine is extremely limited. So quite often my answer will be, sure, I wish I could help, but I really can't tell. So rather let me have a look, and then that ends up being the best for the patient. And lastly is just, again, the thing of respect. We respect the differences between the two industries so that you don't create sort of a wrong expectation for the patients. So if you detect glaucoma as a optometrist, where you suspect glaucoma, you don't, for instance, want to instill fear in the patient or make them extremely apprehensive and say, you're definitely going to need surgery, because then patients are so afraid of that they actually delay that visit by another year before they finally decide to get it checked out. So you do that sort of, I think this is what's going on, but let's get another opinion and do a few extra tests by seeing, Dr. So-and-so, and illustrate the fact that you're part of a team, without creating, either unrealistic expectations or unnecessary fear. And to do that, you need to have an idea of the scope of practice and what are the treatment modalities out there. Because patients will immediately ask, but what do you think it is? And what do you think he's going to do? And what do you think? And say, look, there are many modern treatments out there. Use glaucoma again. You say, it might just be drops. It might not be even glaucoma at all. Or it might be a laser. Or it might ultimately be a surgery. But don't worry about that now. The details still need to be fleshed out. And it also goes for us between different subspecialties. If I see a patient with orbital pathology and the patient asks me, do you think they're going to operate or they're going to do radiation? I'll say, look, this is what the books say, but why don't you see the orbital surgeon and start the journey with him, because you might get a different perspective and he might say, no, we'll just watch it, etc. So that's where that we need to have knowledge of each other's scope of practice, but allow the other person to then apply his trade while you apply your trade, and let the patient ultimately receive the best management. So, and like I said, different optoms will have different thresholds for those things. So you might get optometrists that are extremely interested in neuro and neuro rehabilitation. So they can tell you a lot more than say the average optometrist or even the average ophthalmologist. So by all means, have that conversation. But again, be careful of the expectation that you create. Be careful of preempting the management, because your ophthalmologist might very well decide something different. And it can be hard then to get the patient on board with you if they've already got that sort of prejudice for what they want or what they think is the best.
Wow, I love that.
So if you want to add.
I totally agree with Johan more. I think it's just creating realistic expectations. I mean, you get the two extremes. You get a patient with a pterygium that comes this very same day that's freaked out and they think they're going to go blind and they're not going to go blind. And then you get someone who's told that they possibly have glaucoma and, like he says, comes a year later. So just giving them a realistic outlook on what the possibilities are for whatever condition you think they have. And also just being up to date with whatever's current. Like the treatment paradigms are changing for a lot of diseases. Like glaucoma is becoming more of a surgical disease. We're managing it with laser first line, not necessarily drops anymore. So I think giving a patient a good overview, especially without saying you need surgery, because a lot of them get scared when they hear that, I think helps with their expectations when they get to us. And then it also, how would I say, they're more open to what we have to say when we explain all the options to them. Instead of them thinking, well, what about surgery? I thought I need surgery. And like, no, you don't need surgery. We can start off with drops first. So they're quite hesitant when you sort of give your treatment plan to them. And they're like, no, but that's not what my optometrist said. They said I need an urgent op. So I think just giving them a realistic expectation and knowing what's out there, knowing how things are changing in the way we manage different diseases.
Wow, I love that, because I remember when I was still in practice, I was the one who was making the appointments for the patient. So if I see something, I would actually know that, okay, I'm suspecting this or that, but I'm not sure, and I'm going to send this patient. I would actually pick up the phone and not only build that relationship with the ophthalmologist, but build a relationship with your staff who are making the appointments to say, I've got a patient so-and-so, and I would like them to see doctor, and when can this patient be booked? This is the reasons why I'm booking this patient for a referral, and I will email the referral letter to you. So that was my approach. And I realized that it creates that transfer from my end to your guys' end much, much easier. And you don't create expectations that you would be finding it difficult to now change at a later stage, because the patient then is getting the confidence that this is a team management, one department to the next department technically. So that was my approach. But I've also seen a lot of optometrists writing the referral letter and just giving it to the patient and not even suggesting that go to this particular ophthalmologist as opposed to that. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Should we be specific if it's a retinal thing that we are suspecting, if it's a macular thing that we are suspecting, if it's a lens thing that we're suspecting? Should we be specific to the patients when we are referring them to ophthalmologists? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I think it comes back to building relationships with each other. If you know Johan, you'll know that Johan loves complex glaucoma cases. So if you have a patient that perhaps is a glaucoma patient who maybe defaulted from their treatment and rocks up at your practice as an optometrist, and you're like, this patient now really needs an intervention, he's your guy, that's who you're going to send the patient to. If the patient needs retinal workup, whether it's medical or surgical, you need to know who's the guy who does the medical and surgical retina. So most ophthalmologists have their niche. Everyone does a bit of everything. Most of them do cataracts. But like when it comes to orbital surgery, for example, like Johan said, there are guys who just do orbits and oculoplastics. So you need to know if someone comes with a ptosis, or if there's a cellulitis, or if there's an orbital fracture, you need to know who to send to. Because you could send them to someone, like you could send them to me because you know me, but I'm still going to pass them on to someone who can actually do the surgery after I assess them. So that's why I said it comes back down to who you build your relationships with, because then you get to know them and get to know what they like to do and what they're really good at. And that's where you're going to send your patients.
Dr. Johan?
To add on to, sorry, I interrupted you. No, but just to add on to that,
yes.
If you're not sure, it's still okay. Send the patient. Like I've seen quite a patient, they walk through my door and they give me that complaint, and you know immediately what's going on. And I would just say to the patient, you know what, stop. I'm not even going to charge you because I can't help you, but I know exactly who can. So you can also act as an intermediary. But I like what you said, Obi, about that very personal referral, and quite a few optometrists in my world do that, where they just contact me immediately and they'll be like, I've got this patient in front of me, you know, what do you think I should do, or should I just send them across, and when can you see them, you know? And you immediately, like you said, you have that transfer where you can either put the patient at ease immediately, or they come through as soon as you're available, and it's a very personal relationship. So that really is a nice technique. And obviously you can't always answer the phone, so it's nice, like you said, build the relationship with the staff as well. They get to know you, they remind the ophthalmologist to make sure that he writes the report back, and so everyone stays in touch. So you know, even if you're not sure who to send to, but you think the patient needs further evaluation, it's not a do or die, but it is very good to know exactly, and not, you know, waste the patient's time and resources by sending them to the right person directly. And we appreciate that. We all have things that we enjoy, like Sunushka said, we have our niche. So it's great if you start getting these specific referrals, and you start building that practice, and you become the go-to person. And it's difficult because there are all the go-to people in those areas. Yeah. So you gotta at some point, you know, have that generational transfer, and that's obviously tricky. But it's also good to know that, you know, the younger generation, if it's something we're passionate about but we're not secure in it, we will ask the older guys and say, you know, let's do this case together. So we'll always ensure optimal patient management. And even if it is something we're passionate about, we'll work with someone that's more experienced if we need to. So you can still feel free to send it to a young ophthalmologist as well.
I'm about to ask you guys a difficult question. Because maybe it's not as difficult as I think it is, but you guys alluded to the fact that technological advancements are constantly at the forefront of all things eye care. The way we manage our patients is constantly changing. Now, Ntate Nkosi is in front of in my examination room, and I pick up pathology, and I have to refer Ntate Nkosi. And before Ntate Nkosi commits to going for that referral, Ntate Nkosi then asks, Obi, how much is all of this going to cost? You know, if I go for this cataract operation, how much is it going to cost? And you say, I've got it, I potentially have it in both eyes. And let's say I never even mentioned operation. I'm referring to the patient for pathology on the lens, right? To what level should we be communicating sort of like a broad price range? Should we even be knowing that? Should I be knowing that, look, cataracts, in terms of how we manage them, we either managing them in terms of this, or that, and the prices range or differ. What level of information do we need to be giving patients when it comes to issues around price, which could be sensitive? Because we don't know, you know, a person could be coming for cataract, but you guys end up picking that there's also glaucoma, there's also this, there's also that, there's also that. So how do we manage those patient conversations that we should be having?
Is Tata Nkosi a private patient? Or is he on medical aid?
Well, you see, you will answer the private patient. Johan will answer the public patient. I know. Either way, answer it as best as you can.
So I think the rates do vary, Obi, to be honest. Even with the consultation rate, some people charge medical aid rates, some people charge a little more. And there's always a co-payment when you have a medical aid. So it really depends from doctor to doctor. Most of us, though, do the same baseline examination, but obviously some doctors include extra testing depending on what you're seeing them for. So if you're a refractive patient, you'll have a whole batch of tests done to see if you're a candidate and so forth. But generally for operations, medical aids cover them. Okay. For cataract surgery itself, if you had to explain to a patient about cataract surgery, you've got your cataract surgery where you use a monofocal lens, so we're correcting the patient for distance, and medical aids cover that. But if you're talking about premium IOLs, for example, so if the patient needs a toric, a multifocal, or a toric multifocal, then there's an added expense. And that can range between a co-payment of what, about, Johan will know better than me, but between 4 and 10 grand X on top of the operation. And that's all they would have to pay in, obviously, because the medical aid will cover the actual surgery. So when it comes to surgery, whether they've got a hospital plan or whether they've got comprehensive medical aid, generally your medical aid will cover the surgery. When it comes to a patient who is not on medical aid, it's a lot more challenging because it depends where you work. No. If you've got your own practice with your own clinic and your own theater, the rates are up to you. At the end of the day, you could do the surgery pro deo if you wanted to. But if you work in a hospital where you have to pay hospital fees, you have to pay theater fees, those costs sometimes are actually more than the surgery itself. No. So it really depends where the patient goes. But if they're on medical aid, there's usually no issue.
I hear you. I think how you even explained it, you didn't make the focus about the price. You actually communicated with me, listening to you, about different components that are involved about that. And you broke it down. So I like that approach. Even how I was listening to you right now, it was very clear. Dr. Johan, do you have you want to add on to that?
So I think Sinishka answered very comprehensively. Yeah. You know, they say in any examination, when you get asked a question, you should always start with, well, it depends. Because you buy yourself 5 seconds to think. But it really depends, you know. You see so many patients come in and they have a little piece of rust in their eye from a grinder, and you know, that's a quick fix, but then you pick up, oh my word, this person has end-stage glaucoma, they're about to lose the last 10 degrees of their field and they didn't even know about it, you know. So it depends. It really depends. It depends what's wrong. There's sort of a standard fee structure that we all adhere to. There's very few people that are exorbitant. There are people that feel that they would put themselves in a premium market and they really charge whatever they want. But the patient has to decide, is it worth it for them, you know, and it very well might be. That's the free market, you know. But there's a very big ethical component. It's not like you're buying a hamburger, you know? So you have to also
I'm craving one.
Understand.
I'm craving a burger.
Absolutely. But as a doctor, you also have to understand that very big constitutional element of you have to provide healthcare. Yeah. And people have very different means. So, you know, like Sinishka said, we start with like a basic assessment. And then you can just sit down and have a conversation with the patient. And some doctors are very flexible. Some doctors are extremely rigid. And I guess it depends on your patient population as well. You know, and you will get people that always send you pro bono or pro deo cases. And you're like, oh, I also have to make a living, you know. But we understand that there's a very big need for that. So there's a balance. And it really, like you said, it's not about the price. It's not about the money. It's about that balance between your ability and the patient's need, and you know, finding a way to provide healthcare while at the same time making sure your practice is viable, and you're not creating trends in the industry that's actually going to make it more difficult for your colleagues to pay their overheads, because you're always charging less than what you actually should, because you don't have any overheads, or you're a locum and it just gets taken off as a set percent. There's all these complicated factors that every doctor has to take into account when it comes to how many free surgeries can you do, and how many discounts can you do, and how many, are you signed into a medical aid, or do you just charge a fixed rate regardless, and there's so many, it depends. It depends. But patients, what you can say as an optometrist is, it really depends on what ultimately they find, and they'll have a conversation about what needs to be done, but feel free to just have that conversation with your doctor. If a lot of stuff ends up needing to be done, and it's surgery with hospital fees and all that, just have the conversation. Don't feel bad about it. Yeah. We're all human, and we all have things to pay for, so we all understand that very, very real balance between income and expenses, and have the conversation.
Doctors, should optometrists be involved with therapeutics or not? Because
that's your question.
That has been the thorny bush or burning issue for many optometrists over the last 4 or 5 years. And what are your thoughts on that as the next generation of mega ophthalmology leaders?
I love how you prefaced the previous question as the difficult one.
Yeah, this was the actual conversation I wanted to have.
This one you just throw out. Bam. You know what? It's so good that you're just open about the fact that it's a thorny issue. It's a controversial discussion, and we should have these discussions and not be so quickly offended when we disagree. We're going to disagree amongst ophthalmologists. We're going to disagree hugely. So it's not going to be a disagreement between optometrists and ophthalmologists. It's going to be disagreements between different people in different contexts with different ways of thinking. I alluded previously to things like passion and responsibility, and when it comes to therapeutics, that's the one thing that really puts those two together. I mean, what do I do as an ophthalmologist? I assess people and I apply therapy. I treat them, and that's my passion. But when things go wrong, I have to take responsibility for it. And that's the very real side of therapeutics. It's not a matter of if, it's when. Things will go wrong. You will miss a diagnosis. You will do the wrong treatment, or your treatment will have serious side effects, or your treatment will fail at least. The treatment comes with it's great if you can treat something that you're passionate about, which is eye care, which is every optometrist's practice, a passion, but it comes with tremendous responsibility. And it's something that really shouldn't be taken lightly. It comes with medical legal liability costs per month. Do you pay that? Or if it becomes a problem, do you send the problem then to the ophthalmologist and they have to take the medical legal liability for a therapeutic issue that could have been avoided, or at least the ophthalmologist would have started that journey and monitored and taken responsibility for it. But with that said, and this is where ophthalmologists might disagree with me, and even optometrists might not be comfortable with it, but I definitely have optometry colleagues that I would trust with therapeutics. I mean, I see astonishing, accurate, and thorough referrals that I really feel goes beyond the optometry scope of practice, but I'm not put off or threatened by it. I'm encouraged by it because this person really cares about their patients and they really want to know what's going on. And if it was in their power, they would manage that. So there isn't a black and white answer. We live in a system with constraints even on primary health care. Optometry is the first line. So is there a way that you can improve access to primary health care by giving optometrists more scope of practice? But we also live in a system that's extremely burdened with medical legal costs and complications and stuff. And do you want to put that burden on the shoulders of optometrists, or do you as optometrists want to take up that burden? Because that's what therapeutics means, is the buck stops somewhere. And it comes with huge responsibility. So sorry if I don't give you a controversial
right now.
answer.
I'm just thinking right now, as an optometrist, we both loving and hating your answer at the same time. But it's just like, but exactly what you're saying. I fully understand. I fully get what you're saying. There are pros and cons to that answer. There isn't a black and white. Dr. Mutli, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I 100% agree with Johan. And I think, like we've been saying all along, it comes down to relationships and working as a team. And I think many years from now, it will be a different story if ophthalmologists and optometrists could actually work physically together in a practice and say, you think the patient has glaucoma, you send them to me to actually be diagnosed. And I say, yes, definitely it's glaucoma, go for it, let's start drops. And you continue the management and the monitoring and all of that. I mean, there is room for it. But like Johan says, it comes with so much responsibility. I mean, treating glaucoma with something as simple as drops can go wrong. Patients can have systemic side effects. They can have asthma attacks. They get cosmetic side effects. And like I said earlier, the treatment paradigms are shifting. So you always want to give your patients the best. Okay. Starting them on a specific glaucoma drop might not be the best thing for them. If they're a young patient with glaucoma, do you really want to commit them to 40 years of drops, you know? So I think eventually your scope will probably broaden a bit to include some therapeutics, but I think the responsibility for actual surgical management and laser treatments and so forth will probably still lie with doctors for a long time, purely just because of the training that's involved. Yeah. And also just having the medical background. So having a good systemic knowledge is vital when it comes to prescribing drugs and medication. Pharmacology is so important. Even, I mean, things like the cycloplegic refraction. I mean, giving a premature baby dilating drops could result in an apneic attack, you know, and how do you then resuscitate a baby in your optometric practice if they basically code, you know? I hear you. So like Johan says, it comes with a huge, huge responsibility, and we pay medical legal fees every month just to cover ourselves because the buck does end with us, you know? Wow. So yeah.
No, I love that. I love that. And it's we have to keep having these conversations, you know. That's the only way where we can ensure that whatever final decision that has been made, it's to the benefit of the patient without putting the professional scope of either party at risk in whichever way. So I definitely agree with you guys. And I know there's a lot of optometrists who are listening into this conversation. And what was going at the back of my mind as you guys are giving the response is the optometric program for many African countries. It's similar to that of the United States, where they've got the 4 years undergrad program, which is science related and all of that. And then they've got the optometric program for 4 or 5 years over and above the undergrad program. So you're literally studying for close to 8 years before you can become an OD of optometry. And in some of the African countries, I was having a conversation the other day with a doctor of optometry in Ghana who works with a vitreoretinal surgeon. And the level of clinical knowledge that he's exposed to far outweighs a lot of optometrists who have 20, 30 years experience, simply because of the level of care that he is exposed to on a day-to-day basis, having worked with a vitreoretinal surgeon every single day in practice. So there are so many dynamics that we need to be thinking of. And I think I'm fortunate enough that I'm not in practice, so I can actually ask these questions and not get in trouble and support either side and not get in trouble. But for those optometrists who have been listening to you guys and have been inspired and have made a connection with just listening to you guys, what do you guys specialize in? What are your areas of interest as we close this podcast? Dr. Mutli, what are your areas of interest? And then where can people find you and reach you on social platforms? And how do they get in touch with you guys? And then you will also answer it, Dr. Lambert.
So I do cataract surgery, glaucoma surgery, vitreoretinal surgery, and I essentially manage all medical ophthalmology. And I practice in Pretoria at the Eye Institute. And on social media, they can catch me just by searching my name. There are two Sanishka Mutlis. The one is a psychiatrist, so I'm not that one. I'm the ophthalmologist.
I almost thought you were going to say the other one is a psychopath. and you, Dr. Lamgart?
So it's pure coincidence, but my areas of interest are basically exactly the same. It's what I would call intrascleral.
Everything inside.
You know, it's the hands-on surgery. It's not a computer doing the surgery for you, but it's also not very external. So I don't do a lot of squints and lids and orbits and that stuff, even though there is definitely an overlap, and we all able to do that, and we do that when necessary. But very much cataract, glaucoma, and vitreoretinal surgery, those are the things that I just feel it's the most beautiful, you know, surgery out there, and really enjoy that. And yeah, like I said in the beginning, I'm in Rosebank. I'm on Oxford Road. I'm not nearly as good with my admin, like I said, and also not nearly as good on social media as Dr. Moodley. So you can just look at the Young Ophthalmology site if you remember. She's absolutely amazing. But yeah, you can definitely Google Dr. J.S. Lamprecht. You'll find me. And yeah, I mean, my website, I put blogs and things on, just little catchy things to make people think and make sure they take care of their eyes. And that's at www.convisio.co.za.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
how are you guys using digital media to build your brands, by the way? Because you just mentioned your website now, and I've heard a little rumor that says that you guys have an app as well. If I stand to be corrected, but please tell us more, because is it something that is only applicable to ophthalmologists, or is it applicable to optometrists as well? Because you guys are doing innovative stuff, you know, that a lot of optometrists would connect with. Because why I'm saying that, optometrists now, especially with COVID-19, the people that had been doing sort of like basic or general optometry and depending on that to build their practices, have found that it's becoming more challenging to rebuild their businesses post COVID-19. And it's those optometrists who are in the area of specialty contact lenses, pediatrics, low vision, and so forth, who are offering more than just general optometry, who are continually growing their businesses. And the next generation of optometrists are wanting to get into more things like that and not just rely on basic optometry. So from you guys using digital media the way you do, how is that benefiting your brands and your growth within IK?
I think Johan is more active with that than I am. I think I rely on my hospital's marketing for that.
I think the thing is, so just in terms of digital and online, it's actually just you need to be there so that people can find you. But I think in medicine, you know, by far the most important thing is word of mouth. And you know, if your optometrist says to you, go and see this person, versus you need to see an ophthalmologist, here's a general note and go find someone, that makes a big difference. And the same with family. You know, if your granny you know, tells someone else's granny that this doctor is the most amazing, then that carries a lot more weight than reading on someone's webpage, hey, I'm the most amazing, you know, which is illegal anyway. It's called touting. But you get what I'm saying. So the word of mouth thing, I think, is still by far the most important. But now you're like, okay, so Dr. Lamprecht, and you're like, I lost the business card. You go on Google, who's Dr. J.S. Lamprecht, and I'm not there. So you need to be on the internet to be found. But that's not going to build your trust or build your practice. It's the word of mouth, and then ultimately the work that you do. Do you treat people well? Do they get good results? In terms of, so my website, for instance, is an extremely simple little thing that just gives you a point of contact. And the same as Anushka said, actually the hospitals, the eye hospitals, have really good centralized pages So, you know, you go to Pretoria Eye Institute or Sandhurst Eye Center or wherever they'll actually show you all the doctors that work there and what are their subspecialties and etc. So you can actually much more easily go to the right person. In terms of the app, so we just wanted to create, that was kind of like my little project on the Young Ophthalmology Committee, is we wanted to create a hub for young ophthalmologists for whatever you need. So you needed to have a centralized point with as few taps or clicks as possible to just get what you want. So if you need a small clinical tool, like would normally be handed out in a pamphlet with like Amsler grids or your cobalt blue light or near reading charts or pediatric fixation objects, etc., you would now all have that in 2 or 3 taps on your phone. But in the same breath, if you need to access a rep because you want more information on their products, you just literally 2-3 taps, you go to trade, company, and you go to the rep in your area. Or if you need academic resources, again, it's just on a menu, academics, and you go to the One Network site of the American Academy, and there's a live feed that all the updates, especially now with COVID-19, we've opened it up to all the OSA members, not just the Young Ophthalmology members. All these documents, guidelines, protocols, all the legal opinions, all that stuff, it's constantly evolving, and people are inundated with emails and WhatsApps, and you have to search through all the junk. Now there's just a central platform with one live news feed that gets updated all the time with links, and you just literally tap once and it takes you there and you download the document. So it's to just make it easy for young ophthalmologists to get integrated into the system and find what they need to just be active and not make building a practice in an environment that is becoming more and more regulated and bureaucratic and difficult. Just make it easier to find what you need. So it is very focused. I mean, it's actually a great idea to further build the network, is to have something that overlaps into optometry. We just literally had limited time and budget, and we focused on young ophthalmology. Remember, but that's a nice thing about
to establish
the
Young Optometrist Association. So I'm going to be calling one very soon.
And Johan has all the connections for the app. One of his buddies did it for us. So there you go. We're
coming, Doc.
Yeah.
There was no nepotism. No, it's a service provider that I happen to know. And but just, you've got budget and time constraints, and you have to choose what are you really trying to build. And then you can always expand on that. You can always update and upgrade and connect with, etc. So that's how we started, and it's still very young and it's showing promise, but we hope that it grows, and it has to add value. It's not about just creating gimmicks and being all digital. It's about adding value to your colleagues and your industry.
No, thank you very much, doctors. This was very fun. I learned a lot, and so grateful for what we have discussed this afternoon. And I'm confident that the many optometrists that are listening in and ophthalmologists from across the continent would have learned a great deal in terms of how powerful it will be if both components of the eye care industry, including dispensers who are on a different level as well, how important for all of us, as well as ophthalmic assistants, the importance of all of us coming together and ensuring that this is the most incredible industry with regards to healthcare as a whole. So thank you very, very much for today. I'm very, very grateful that I had this opportunity to sit with both of you and just discuss eye care the way we did today.
Thank you for having us.
And that's it for today, everybody. Make sure to connect with us on our website, iafricamedia.com. And of course, follow us on the different social media platforms as iAfrica Media. We're looking forward to the amazing things that are going to continue taking place in eye care from a technological point of view, and all the innovation that is taking our industry to the next level. Thank you.